Kia ora, Nick, and welcome to my reflection on Domain 1. I decided to do this via audio as it's easier for me to talk than it is to write. So, just an overview, I'm going to look at the relationship between the domain goals and the artifacts, and then also how I can apply the learning to my current role as an RTV. So for the first goal, it says, by the 24th of August, I will have researched and critically examined the concepts of inclusion and inclusive education and the implications that this has on mainstream and resource teachers of New Zealand. So I decided to do a literature review for this one. And in terms of how the goal relates to the artifact, I think it's quite good because I did critically examine and research the concepts of inclusion, and particularly I honed into the theory of the collaborative consultative role, which RTVs currently is probably the main model that RTVs use when collaborating with mainstream schools. So I think it was really good that I learned about this, as I can apply it to my practice. So it talks about how, where is it? Collaboration. It says typically where am I? Yeah. Bishop identified that a collaboration between school, family, and the student is one of the key factors that is essential to the success of inclusive education. Fleener states that when the itinerant teacher is the expert role, it does not allow for joint problem solving and shared communication, as does the consultative collaborative process. The itinerant teachers provide students with impairment-specific visual adaptation and appropriate strategies. So, I mean, the way I can apply this is that it just affirms the knowledge of that I'm a part of a collaborative process within the classroom. So I'm involved in IEPs, school plays. If the teachers have any questions regarding even their programs, it doesn't necessarily have to be vision specific, then I'm happy to be part of that. But also it gives me the ability to share my knowledge, specifically vision knowledge, and in terms of consultative, that's quite good for me because being assertive isn't necessarily my forte. So by seeing myself as a consultant, I can use that platform as a way of communicating what the student needs and advocating for that. So yeah, I found that really, really valuable. I'm just going to go back. So the next goal, I also added in something, but I haven't put it with I haven't actually changed the goal. This is a forum on an inclusive discussion that I just put out there, and it was basically after I did a few readings on, from my literature review, about how much special education is actually needed for teachers, or is it actually a philosophical and values-based thing? Is inclusion values and attitudes based as opposed to knowledge based? And yeah, if you see there, you can see some of the discussions that I had with Kay and Janet regarding attitudes versus knowledge and some of the key skills that you need to be an inclusive teacher. So after I kind of critiqued the information, I came away with the idea that it was really important that you have like an inclusive lens, so that you actually, Janet and Kay talked about how you need to learn so much about the whole person, and that you start kind of storing away this knowledge, and you always just kind of have it in the back of your mind. Okay, what would this person want? Would this immersion course be really good? Who could this apply to? Like, you might see a new piece of technology and be like, oh, this will be good for Jamin, or so you kind of, you need to make sure that you've got this lens that you're always viewing the world by. So that was quite good for me. With goal 2, in regards to the goal and the artifact, I decided to co-construct an article on the history of education for learners who are blind and low vision, both nationally and internationally. And then below that, I also did a co-constructed article about the present situation for learners who are blind and low vision and what surrounds them. I think probably on reflection that goal might be a little bit broad, and I could have maybe been a bit more specific, but that's okay. Personally, I did the section on international history, and I was quite surprised that internationally other parts of the world were about 200 years ahead of us in terms of providing education for our students, which I think is quite a long time because 200 years of no education or not recognised education for visual impairment would not be that great if you're visually impaired. Also, the other interesting fact I found was the difference in technology and how that changed over time to what we're working with now currently as RTVs. And how I would apply this to the classroom is that I think it would be a really good project for students to do in terms of understanding the background of vision education. And I think as well, another way of applying it is that it kind of gives me a little bit of a marker in the sand around how slow things take to change, that it's often led by changes led by a group of people who then turn it into a policy or some type of legislation which then can be lawfully advocated by. So it also gave me some awareness of how important the Convention of Rights are, the disability strategy, the New Zealand legislation for people with impairments, so that really if I'm needing to advocate for a student, then those documents should be the places that I go to or already have a really good understanding of. In terms of like the format and as a learning opportunity, I think it's quite simple, making a table. Recently I was up at Homai and I saw their museum and I thought, oh, that would have been a cool way to kind of look at some of the national history, or possibly even view a video. I don't find kind of tables and things as interesting as other learning media, but that's okay. So now I will go down to, oh whoops, I forgot to talk about the current situation for learners with vision, and this was very interesting. Sorry, I just had to go here. So this was pretty much done with me and Chloe. So what I found interesting was the difference between what I found was that pretty much internationally and nationally, kids with vision impairments have access to an RTV or a TVI, but the way that it's embedded is quite different. So for example, with the BLENS document that I looked at, the guiding beliefs and values of BLENS reflect the values within these documents. So I think that BLENS have a really culturally responsive base document, whereas that was not reflected in, say, the USA or the UK. And I just thought that was quite interesting. That really was not happening overseas. So I thought, oh yeah, good on BLENS, because according to the ecological model of learning happens within context, culture, and whānau, and that's how the best learning happens. So now I will move on to goal 3, which is I will have created a document to support student and parent voice at IEP meetings. So after reading a couple of different papers and also viewing the videos from Perkins, I made a wee resource. I really like this type of thing. Like, this is really me to a T. Like, I'm part Māori, and I think in terms of the goal relating to the artifact, what did I put here? I put I will create an IEP resource. And because I had quite a few students with upcoming IEPs, I just thought that this would be quite practical. So for me, actually making a resource is probably the most valuable way of having artifacts, because then I can use them, or otherwise having like a physical experience, like maybe going to like a place to learn or some PD or something. So I need to take that into account for the upcoming domains. So with My Māori, it's really about understanding the whole person, seeing it in a more holistic way, and it gives the opportunity for parents to, instead of just talking about assessment or anything like that, it's it's kind of like, what are the dreams for the child, and where is the child most comfortable, kind of takes into some of those sensory accounts too. And it helps me to understand the background of the child, and it can be done in the form of a picture or writing or drafts. And being a parent of a child with recently being diagnosed with a learning disability, or I'm not really sure what it is, if I had the opportunity to fill out something like this, I think I'd feel quite empowered that actually people wanted to know about Joe, or people wanted to know about our family and what's important to us. So yeah, I was really happy with that one. For goal 5, I will have critically discussed and co-created a position statement. Oh yeah, that was quite good. So that's where we all did it together, and I did the collaborative consultative part of that role. It was quite interesting reflecting on what some of the other people wrote. What have I written here? Yeah, I think that goal's alright, compared to what I actually made. I guess the way that I would use that in practice was the knowledge that I gained from some of the other teachers, particularly around that quadrant. There's 4 quadrants in there about it's important that the RTV knows the different way that people view learning. So that was my big takeaway in terms of my learning from that. I kind of already knew from my inclusion, literature review about the consultative collaborative role, so I was just kind of reframing that information to fit that statement. So yes. Oh, did I miss anything out? All right, yes. I also did a forum post about the changing role of the RTV in terms of digital technology. That was quite interesting because I didn't, in the Blends curriculum, it has some expectations, and then I compared those to, I think it was the Texas Blind School, and what their expectations were. And yeah, it was quite interesting that, I'm not that digitally savvy as compared to some other people, so I know that this is an area that I will need to do some PD on, and that's probably a next step for me, is to become more comfortable using technology. But that's okay. So I think I've covered everything. So I will just leave it there. See you later.